order. Would you please stand and salute the flag? Pledge
Allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Welcome to the meeting. Next thing on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from the last meeting, November 16th.
The only thing that I saw is my name goes through a wide variation of spelling. Either Kristen, Christine,
Chris.
with an E on the end.
Can
without
we just
an
settle on
but
Chris?
E, you can have Chris and that's fine. It doesn't matter, but
I make a motion that we alter the minutes. Because Chris's name is just Chris, just plain Chris.
that's the only thing really
What
that
about all?
it can be all yelling at me, and that's fine, because I'm used to that too, so.
Replace the I with an exclamation point.
Yeah, that's the only thing that I saw. Did you have
Did
something?
you have any, I mean,
No.
there was an awful lot of what you said here. So what you said here is, what was here is what. She did
If he
every, she almost like
remembers.
did every word. Okay, so. What you said? Right.
I said, if he remembers what he said. I say a lot of things that I don't always remember, which is a bad thing. So,
It was a reasonable representation. I had no reason to edit what I said. And if there's any question, we can always refer to the video.
do you have any changes?
I did
You were
not-
good?
I got, way late on the cat stuff.
So I'll make a motion to approve the mittens, the minutes. I don't even need this. With the only changes in the spelling of my name.
Chris, known as Chris from now on. I second the motion.
It was a motion by Chris and a second by Ken to approve the minutes of November 16th.
Mr. Chair, are you sure that's not Kristen?
Or Christine.
All those in favor? You. Next, department report.
Yes, I'm good.
Yeah.
I don't have a whole lot to report on tonight. Next meeting, we'll be getting the stats for the month of November. Fairly quiet month, complaint wise, we probably handled about 250 complaints. We'll break down on those at the next meeting. I have planning on a police department get together. Packard Center on the 11th. At 3 in the afternoon. Same thing we did last year, just to get together of everybody, just socialize outside of our law enforcement work. Our new tasers came in yesterday. As soon as we get trained on them, we'll be utilizing those going forward. Really nice equipment, and I appreciate you working with me on that to get those updated because they need to be. Other than that. Oh, yeah. Kirk is back. So. Our other two full timers are getting the needed time off they need. When Kirk's back in the rotation has been. Godsend.
I knew he was back.
Sorry.
I knew he was back because he was back parked in his favorite spot.
Yeah, down around the corner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just picking him off like hands on a
Yep.
fence line. That's a good thing.
Picking
Oh,
non-compliant drivers?
Yes,
oh, good.
speeders.
Yes, sir.
What did you say you just got?
The new tasers.
Oh, new tasers, yes.
Yeah.
Are you volunteering for a test run?
That's what I was thinking. I was gonna
Next meeting, when we have them up and running, we'll, bring them up and do a demonstration for you, so you can see the difference between the old and the new. What the capabilities are.
That'd be nice.
It's like night and day.
Chief, that would be helpful. Along the financing of those tasers, we did a 5-year lease agreement.
Yes.
And is it possible, I know that some of our ARPA funding that we had budgeted for other things is not necessarily being spent. Is it possible that we can prepay that lease with ARPA funding?
Absolutely, yeah.
Legit?
There are funds available, yeah.
The warrant article allows for purchases of police equipment. It's in the article. So if you so choose to use some of that money.
Okay.
Just do that. Yep.
Might be a good use of the funding that is not being fully used on the water survey in North Monmouth. Turns out, by the way, just FYI, the water survey, a lot of the testing costs are being covered by Tex Tech and by DEP.
Not all of them, though.
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. A good portion. There may be some testing that would be required of the town, but I don't know.
How would we know? Get a bill.
Well, the consultants would be approaching the town manager with a request for payment. And they've not yet done that.
We paid 2 bills for them, but they've been like just installments based on the work that they've completed thus far.
And not really testing issues, but
No, it's just part of their contract, right?
so we'll see. And we can, the chief has the floor. We can come back to that issue.
Any questions?
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll just go over a few things. The auditors are here this week, so we're trying to get throw this one back caught up. It's going pretty well, I think, so far. He said so today, so that's good. I signed the streetlight agreement today, so once that gets through the CMP process, they have to have several people in their organization sign it, like the president. So like, I don't know how quick that'll be around.
Can you give us an idea of the financial implications? How much is it going to cost? How much is it going to save?
The streetlights are 58,000 and some change. It was approved at the last town meeting. And the savings average is about, the lease fees are about $700 a month for those streetlights. But when they did their inventory, they found 4 poles and extensions and special streetlights that were put in at the request of the town at some point that we haven't been getting billed for. So that will increase our bill on those particular ones by, they're not going to go back and charge us the back years or anything, but from now on, so they wanted to know that that'll be about another $80 a month over what we're paying now for those poles that they didn't know existed. I sent you-
So $700 a month-ish.
Yep.
Plus or minus a small amount.
Right, yeah.
Which translates into about $8,400 a year. And we're spending $56,000 to capture that.
58, I think.
$58,000, thank you.
Yep.
So that's like yeah, what is that? In terms of
7, 8 years, something like.
break even? 7-8 year break even, so that's like a 9 or 10% rate of return.
I sent you a copy of the solar RFP today. I just wanted to say, so everybody knew there's a draft that I sent. Ken said he was willing to look at it, so I sent him a copy.
I got it. I did the first reading.
No,
Get back to it.
don't worry about it. I just wanted everybody to know that I had sent that to you.
Just, and I had some time to think a little bit about that.
Yeah.
The rules for, because there's some references to the Inflation Reduction Act in that. The rules for the Inflation Reduction Act are expected at the beginning of the year. In January. Those are going to be published by the federal government. And because there's some references to the IRA in the RFP, we might want to wait an extra couple of weeks, just to make sure that the vendors, when they're giving us their proposals, have had plenty of time to get familiar with the new IRS rules about what municipalities can and cannot do and how you go about doing it.
The last thing I wanted to say is the RSU2 reps will be at your next meeting.
That on their agenda
Okay.
or their calendar
Yeah.
went, oh.
Yeah.
Well,
That's all I have. Unless you have any questions.
Select board reports.
Grateful Grains. Right there behind Tammy Drummond's house. Yeah. So much. I was looking at the detailed construction cost list in the mobile home. No, what am I saying? Sorry. It's not where it is. I'm confused. I looked at the wrong thing, so.
We were looking for the
For the
location of the
location
solar
of the solar
array that was proposed
Nothing
for
for
Fish Hatchery
Fish Hatchery
Road.
Road, so.
Exactly what area of Fish Hatchery Road is going. That's what she.
Yeah, sorry, and I
Is it there?
disregard, it's not there, so. Do you know?
Yes, hi, I'm Andy Smith, by the way. I
Yes.
Sit on the conservation.
Yes,
Yeah, that array is going behind it's the lot that sits directly south of my farm. And then it is behind where those barns are, where there are cannabis grow operations.
yes.
They are the ones who own the parcel that
That
is being
field.
actually leased to us. So it's that field there.
Okay,
20-acre parcel, and I think they have proposed developing 13.76 acres of it.
Planning board agenda is 299 South one.
okay.
So it sits behind that red barn.
It's behind the red barn, like right by the stream crossing,
Mhm.
where it goes under the road there, where it washed out a few years back.
Right where the snowmobile trail goes.
Actually, yes, and exactly right where the snowmobile trail goes. Yep, and the entrance access point would be on the South Monmouth Road as opposed to the Fish Hatchery Road.
Okay,
Okay.
so, yeah. What number Fish Hatchery did you say? It's on Fish Hatchery. I was reading something wrong, so, of course, that's not really where it is.
Yes, sometimes never addresses.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah, the property has far more frontage on the South Monmouth Road than it does on the Fish Hatchery
Yeah.
Road.
so after you go where those two red buildings are, where they grow marijuana out and behind there.
Anything else from the select board?
I had a chance to meet with the Monmouth Water Association Saturdays ago, 7 a.m. And yeah, it's one of those meetings you have to bring a cup of coffee to. We had a conversation about progress on the North Monmouth Water Survey and feasibility study. They have a rough draft of their engineering report. And they have some preliminary testing results. And I think they're gonna have a community meeting shortly.
Oh, if I have anything to say, it would only be about, I watched the Bailey Flat Bridge because I'm in a butter, I'm a property owner, so I went to and watched that online meeting about it. And that's not gonna happen this summer. It probably won't happen till 25. So it's a ways out. Was hoping they'd slow down cars for 3 months. Cause that road's gonna get shut down. There's no way they can do anything other than that. And luckily, there's lots of ways around that. So, but definitely it's needed. Don't you own the property on the other side of the road?
Not where the culvert is,
Oh, okay,
mine's down further.
just down further.
Yep.
But
I watched both.
I didn't watch the other one, cause.
I didn't have a chance to see the Wagon one. What was your impression of the Wagon?
Well, it's a lot of preliminary
Yeah.
stuff. They don't know what kind of a bridge they're gonna put in yet. And my only concern was, after watching it, was how it might disturb the milfoil in that restricted area. And I did, in my response, I mentioned that. Of course, I corrected their spelling of.
Yes, Wagon, yeah,
And the fact that it was Wilson Stream, not Wilson Street.
yeah,
That was, what's that gonna do in the Wilson Stream area? That would, get stuff disturbed, invasives, and then further out, in the lake, I don't know. But I got a reply from Julie, and she said, that would be something they would be concerned about. And with then I was, the other thing I said about the Bailey Flat Bridge was that since they're both gonna happen the same summer, 25, that would the detours interfere with each other somehow. And he said they don't correspond, so you wouldn't get stuck.
cause they keep up to, I mean, the detours they publicize are state roads, so they're using 135 and 132 to get around, like my house.
Well, they have both
And,
sides.
but then they showed the local roads, but luckily there's lots of little side streets to get from here to there. But, yeah. And my only thing with Bailey Flat, I hope they take every beaver they can with them.
Eliminate, making the bridge instead of just culverts, was it 3 culverts?
Well, I don't think there'll be a bridge there. I think they'll end up with a box culvert and on my, down on the flats, because there's no way around it.
You said they haven't decided on what type of bridge
Right.
to
They-
put
they
in
showed
the
pictures
Wagon,
of 3 types.
the 3 possibilities,
Yeah,
and 2 lanes.
yes, oh, yes.
And have they figured out the elevation?
Well, it seemed to me that they're gonna try to keep the elevation flat. I mean, I believe. From what and the bridge would be a beam, the same kind of steel beam or concrete beam bridge that they have for Wilson.
All right.
Endicott.
One of the things that, I mean, of course, the milfoil thing is a moving target, so we don't know where the milfoil might pop up next year. I know that this year, when we did the survey of the milfoil in that area, there was none that was observable in that area that was invasive. It was farther out, kind of toward the delta, farther into the lake.
Yep.
So I don't know that that's necessarily a big concern. And long-term, my hope would be that we could figure out a way to get rid of that restricted zone. And if that were the case, that we might be weighing in to ask them to make that bridge high enough so that you can pass a small boat underneath. So that folks don't have to get out of their boat. If they want to go on the other side of the bridge, they could just go through.
That would be something you'd want to.
Yeah, so
Your comment.
that's open until what date?
November 2nd, maybe, I'm not sure.
Soon?
Soon.
December 2nd,
All right.
so the public comment is, yeah.
Deadline.
Yeah, Yeah,
But while we're on the topic of bridges, I was down by Beaver Brook and I noticed that road has washed out again. There's cones set out. I don't know what Dan's plan is to prepare that for winter, but there is a hole. You can stand in the road and look down into the road surface, 18, 20 inches, 2 feet. There's fabric in there, so they repaired it, but what they repaired washed out, and now there's been cones. There's cones around it for 3+ weeks now. But it's gonna freeze, and I would think they would want to get some material put in there and get it so they can plow. They can't plow with cones in the road and get it passable again.
Is it public works code?
Yes,
So they know about it.
yep, they do. They do.
If I see him, I'll mention. Okay, public comment? Public comment. Then consider a request from the Conservation Commission to impose a solar development moratorium.
I don't know if you want to just let me talk.
Oh, I mean, I wasn't planning on talking.
Oh, you weren't?
Waiting for the roof to blow off.
Okay, you mean to put you on the spot. I didn't know if that's you.
Well, I mean, so
You had a letter in your.
Right, we
You had
got
the
the
letter
letter
in.
and that, you know, and then I also know that Steve O'Donnell, the chair of the planning board, also sent a more thorough letter following up on our letter.
Which I put in front of all of
So
you.
I just wanted to come and, you know, if you guys had any questions for the commission, I am their delegate who came, and Noni Prince is also on Zoom.
BG is up there too.
I think Steve,
Yeah, we certainly would like to hear
No,
your,
Steve is up, yeah.
we'd like to hear your concerns. I mean, is there more other than what Steve had put in his letter?
Well, I think between the two letters, yeah, we listed all the many concerns that we have with the existing ordinance.
I did not see that one.
Oh, that is, yeah.
have you seen Steve's?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they're all things that I'm concerned about, because if you drive up 201 and out of Fairfield, or drive to Farmington 27, or drive out Route 3 in Augusta, all those fields that are farms. It's not the same anymore. So those are all concerns that I've had since the Ridge Road. So definitely that has to be considered for sure. I think Justin had good kind of plan.
I can just go over process if you want about how these things work. So when you did this last time, there was a scheduled state special election in March to fill Shanna Bellow's seat when she became Secretary of State. There is no special election coming up. But the only people that can impose it to begin with is the town. So you would have to put it before the voters. We don't have a typical town meeting here, which you can call quickly. You only need 7 days notice for a special town meeting if there was urgency. We can't do that. So we have to have an election. So if you wanted to do this, process would be is you direct me, I'd get a moratorium, basically ordinance drafted with all the whereas that are in the front from the town attorney, and I'd bring it to another meeting you can consider. If you accept it at that meeting, we have to set an election sometime 60 days out from there, because I have to have 30 days notice plus the 10-day public hearing that you're required to do, and then you have to make the ballots and you've scheduled the election. So we need 60 more days. So the earliest that you would probably hold a special election, if you so chose to do, would be sometime in March. The alternative would be for you to potentially appoint an ad hoc committee that would work on these changes. And if they could get them to you by April, you could include them in the standard June warrant, so it could be on the June election. So those are just kind of the practical
In the meantime, we could declare a temporary moratorium.
You cannot,
Well,
No.
we were not
the
authorized.
select board is not authorized. You're allowed to extend them. So
Okay,
once the town people make one for 100, up to 180 days, say they did 180 days, you can extend it another 180 days, but you can't implement the first one.
so the moratorium, though, if the voters were to declare one, could be effective as of today, because we're having a public conversation about it.
No, we'd have to call an election. So the
Well-
student,
My understanding is that because we have a conversation on record about the desirability of a moratorium, that retroactivity would be possible.
it's possible to go retroactive. It is possible, once the town votes for it, you could apply it retroactive
Retroactive to today,
potentially.
potentially.
There are court cases that kind of determine the boundaries of that. The state law doesn't envision that, but it's been litigated. So if you meet those conditions, and I don't want to speak about those because I'm not intelligent about it,
Okay.
but there are conditions that you have to meet to apply retroactivity.
So the fact that we're having this conversation right now and potentially appointing a special committee to explore this so that we can put it on the ballot would mean that anyone who were to approach the town with a proposal after today could be subject to retroactivity in a moratorium,
If the townspeople passed it in place.
if the townspeople decided they would.
Yeah.
And so if you're thinking about, if you're a developer who's thinking about putting a proposal in front of the planning board, submitting a proposal, they should realize that potentially there could be some changes that they would be subject to. I mean, I look at the concerns that have been listed by Steve O'Donnell. And it seems to me like they're all very reasonable concerns, right? Setbacks, making sure that we're not overly populating one part of the town with, solar farm. Things like the potential for noise going across property lines. Visual, making sure that we've locked down all the visual barriers that we would want to see in a place. Dual use of agricultural and solar panels, all of that totally says to me like, okay, this makes sense. This is reasonable. This is stuff we've learned from the first one that came through the pipeline, that we could do a better job of tweaking a few things. So if someone else is thinking of proposing a solar array in Monmouth, with the exception of the one that's already been sent to the planning board currently, already on the agenda, then they should be put on notice that there is the possibility that there might be some changes to our ordinance, and that they ought to be talking to, if we appoint a special committee, they ought to be talking to that special committee to make sure that whatever they've got planned is gonna comply with whatever direction they're thinking about going. It's not, the answer is not no, it's just, okay. There are gonna be a couple of tweaks here. And if you wanna move forward with your project, make sure that you're touching base, because if we propose a change to the ordinance or even a moratorium while the ordinance is being thought about, retroactivity could apply. And their project could be turned down after a whole lot of, planning and investment and people, making a lot of effort to think about how they want to configure their, technology. And then we say, oh, no, sorry, you didn't get the setbacks right? Bummer.
I know of one where there has already been a site visit from a major company in town,
Oh, good.
another proposed, so I will alert them.
You might.
This possibility.
Yeah. I don't see any issues that have been brought forward either by, Steve O'Donnell or folks that I've talked to at the Conservation Commission, or particular members of the planning board who did a site visit up at the new solar farm. To, take a fresh look at our solar ordinance and say, maybe we can do better.
Is that something we want the Conservation Commission to start exploring, or do we need to appoint someone to a committee to?
I think that might be a question you might want to either ask the commission or maybe even Steve. I'm not sure if, whether the planning board may want to be involved in those discussions since he also gave concerns, so I'm not sure.
Well, I mean, so the planning board would be the ones who would be, I would imagine would be primarily responsible for drafting the ordinance. I mean, I think that the Conservation Commission would like to be heavily involved in that process. So, if there's a specific committee to revise the ordinance, I kind of would imagine, a mishmash of the two groups. Well, I mean, it's up to you guys, I guess.
Yeah.
Any interested members from the public as well who aren't on those committees, just
Totally, that's it. You guys can set the parameters, the number of members who, whether you want the composition to include, a minimum of, two from here, public person. You can seat yourself on it if you want to. If one of you wants to, rep the board, you certainly can participate. It's really up to you.
I would also say that I'd be happy to serve on that committee. I just love committees.
And then you have, the fun thing is you get to fill out an application, because that's what we had people do for the academy rebuilding committee. So, and with that, we have, I'm the select board liaison, and then we have Lori, Dawn, Dr. Bougie, Steve. 5 members, and then me, right? No, and Sarah. So there's 7. So there's 7. So there's, an odd number. Which I think is reasonable, because it gives you an opportunity to have some different people there. I mean, so for me, somebody wants to be a select board liaison. That's always helpful, because it's a good communication way to communicate back and forth with the select board, having a liaison from the select board. And then, whether you do 3 planning board members and 3 conservation committee, or 1 person, however you want to divide it up. What do you think of that?
You can also just ask us to advertise, and then you can decide after we have a list of people that are interested. You can, you could decide that way
Yeah,
too. if you want.
exactly. And, I was involved with the asking the people that I thought would be most helpful with construction and experience and things like that, that I was trying to pull together a good group. So that's something to be actively involved in, people that you want to have knowledge and can impart some knowledge that this one knows about this one knows about this, and ask them to fill out an application. I think that's a good plan, but I think having, those for the June ballot makes no sense, because a special election is just costly and difficult. Plus, you'd have to go get 300 some odd signatures to even do that, because you'd have to do what's the word I'm looking for?
Well, you can call it on your own if you wanted to.
Call it
You
on
didn't
our
want
own.
to do it if you wanted.
Yeah.
There's 2 methods to get it.
Yeah. Last time we had them collect signatures
Yeah.
and did it that way.
So I'm understanding though, so the retroactivity thing, even if we're not voting on a moratorium, the retroactivity, if you guys are deciding to put together a committee to propose changes to the ordinance that would then be presented to the town in June, those changes would apply starting today?
As of today, a first
Even if it's not
conversation
a
on the
moratorium.
record.
Is that
Yep.
how you perceive it?
Potentially.
Potentially.
I mean, it would have to be adjudicated in court. That would be a very expensive proposition for anybody
Right, probably.
who's thinking about developing a solar farm. And so they probably wouldn't. And so just by putting them on notice as part of this meeting, we would very likely be able to impose new changes to the ordinance retroactively.
Steve, do you have anything that you'd like to add?
Can you hear me now? I think I was on mute.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so right now, we have one project that they have filed an application with the town, and it's been referred to the planning board. We haven't accepted that application formally because we haven't had a meeting. Meeting is coming up next week, next Thursday. So we can certainly alert the applicant that there may be a moratorium in the works, and they can decide accordingly what they want to do. But that's sort of where things stand on our end. And, you know, I think we have the bones of a pretty good ordinance, but, you know, I think experience is the best teacher, and certainly seeing now the completed project up on the Ridge Road. You know, I think that applicant did a good job, but they voluntarily agreed to do certain things which they really didn't have to do. And we had some discretion, but I think some of the changes that they agreed to made that a more palatable project for most of the people in the neighborhood. I think there's room for improvement. I think the Conservation Committee has really pointed out some important issues. And as you've mentioned, these projects are spurting up all over. And, you know, do we want to set some guidelines for what areas of the town can sort of accommodate these type of developments, and what type of setbacks or other steps we need to take to satisfy the neighborhood? I think that's one of the big concerns.
Steve, a question for the legal part of your mind. The folks who've already submitted an application, is it conceivable that they could, because their application has already been submitted, that they could sidestep any changes or a moratorium should the town decide to impose it?
Yeah, I haven't looked at that for a while, Ken, the sort of whether that gives them some sort of standing. Typically, you know, before the planning board can review anything, it has to determine that a complete application has been submitted. So yeah, they submitted an application. They were going to come into the last meeting, and then they, I guess, contacted Richard, the code enforcement officer, and told him they needed to revise their some of their survey information. So at this point, I'm not sure that merely filing that without the town issuing a sort of a receipt for that application. I mean, one of the problems, of course, with all the transition that we've had with code enforcement officers, and I don't know that maybe some of the formal steps that the ordinances require have been strictly followed. But again, you know, we have an application. The planning board really for the first time will be looking at it in any formal way next week, so.
Well, my hope is, and the revisions that Steve, you've mentioned in your letter, and the types of changes that I've heard discussed from Conservation Commission members, my hope is that there can be sort of an informal conversation that says, here's what we've got in mind going forward. Is there a way that we can work this out?
And I think that, that may be a possibility. As I say, we haven't had any conversations with any of the people involved in this project, so hopefully they'll be responsive to any concerns that the town has.
What are the thoughts on, limitations of how many the town would be open to having? I know that's
Yeah, that's sort of an interesting question, whether you have to have a different type of land use structure to deal with that. I don't know. I mean, towns set limits, say, on the number of dispensaries there are for marijuana. But that may be something that's set out by statute that gives them towns the authority to do that. And, we don't anywhere else that I can think of off the top of my head sort of restrict commercial development in any way to a specific number. So that's sort of new ground, I think, for the town. Whether you could say, well, you can only have 2 of these developments on one road, for instance. Or, I don't know the answer. Maine Municipal may be able to give us a little guidance on that. And I don't know. I haven't seen. I've seen a lot of ordinance. There's a lot of working groups that have looked at solar ordinances, such as the Maine Farmland Trust. Even Kennebec Land Trust has done some work. And I don't know whether they've addressed that issue, but you certainly look around and there are certain areas that, certain towns seem to have a lot of these development. I mean, Augusta has, I don't know, 4 or 5 projects, I think, in the pipeline or, under construction.
I've been in communication with folks at Maine Farmland Trust and about this, and they have expressed a willingness to come and help craft an ordinance and lend their expertise to the issue if that's something
that would be great, to pick everybody's mind that's been involved with it and try to come up with a good plan, because the thing I always say is, people ask me what I envision. I think about my grandfather and my father and what their vision for this town was. I told Rick Dyer this. I don't think that my grandfather's vision of Ridge Road was that. So it's kind of interesting there's a house for sale up there and they have drone shots of the house. And you look at those drone shots of the house that's for sale and that solar farm. To me, it's not pretty. Anyway, so if anybody's interested in seeing what it looks like from an aerial view, it's pretty interesting.
The things that you proposed in your letter, planning board to us, does the Ridge Road array eat any of these? I mean, I think it might, but from what I saw when I was up there.
Well, like Steve said, I mean, they certainly worked with the planning board on certain issues and made voluntary changes. But you definitely can't expect every developer to be willing to do that. And that also was a large parcel and with a landowner who was willing to accommodate those changes. Especially when you look at lot sizes, projects like the one that's been proposed in the South Monmouth Road, where they only have a 20-acre parcel to work with to begin with. There's not a lot of room there for changes. With regard to like a dual use, so maintaining agricultural production on the same piece of land that solar is going. I guess I would just say there's been a lot of lip service from the company that they are interested in doing that, but then every time farmer follows up with them about incorporating even just sheep grazing under the panels to manage vegetation, that it's crickets. So
They don't want that.
well, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying it's not important, it seems, to the company because it's not in the ordinance mandating that is the way that a development on agricultural land. It's like there's going to be a continued agricultural use of the land in addition to the development. So that's certainly one thing that is not happening right now that, the revisions that we would like to make would address. So,
It would seem to me that you'd want something under there to take care of all the grass.
yeah, well, I mean, the easy, the lowest hanging, easy thing to do is just a mow, right? So
Yeah.
that's what we know how to do.
Yeah.
So, mow grass, so.
Yeah.
I understand that at one point DEP was penalizing a developer for having sheep graze the grass.
Not penalizing, no, because, so site wall in Maine, it's any development over 20 or 20, I don't know, Steve would probably be able to tell you the exact acreage, but, there are different rules that applied for nutrient management on those sites. So when these projects began being developed around the state, DEP said, well, we don't know how to regulate the nutrient runoff potential of having grazing livestock on those sites. So they put a hold on doing any sort of solar grazing in the state at that point in time. But that issue has been worked out. It's just, yes, it's just when a solar developer goes to DEP with their plan, they just have to include information about, whatever farming activities are going to be going on that parcel.
So there's no penalty if a developer were to choose to have sheep grazing.
Not to my knowledge. I
Okay,
know the Department of Agriculture, Conservation Forestry was very proactive in working with DEP to rectify that problem because that department is very interested in, seeing solar development, renewable energy development that is compatible with agricultural use.
Right.
Because of the huge amount of land that we're potentially going to be taking out of agricultural production if we don't figure out how to do two things on one piece of land.
And if my memory serves me, that snowmobile trail does go right through that parcel, so.
The parcel in question on the South Monmouth,
Yeah.
yes, it does. I mean, granted, snowmobile trail is a landowner permission
Exactly.
thing, so I wouldn't think there's any way that any town committee could
No,
require them
I'm
to do
like
that.
saying, here's got somebody from the snowmobile club here, if they wrote a letter to them saying, well, are you still gonna be open to
Yeah,
using your property? Are we gonna have to find a new way around? So at
Yeah.
least that they're at least thinking about other impacts.
right, and that's the sort of thing that would be great to include in the ordinance, even if it's just they need to demonstrate perhaps that they are making an effort. I mean, I know of another proposed project that isn't going to happen down on Route 126 in South Monmouth. And for that project, that company actually was willing to allow the snowmobile trail to continue to go through the parcel.
Yeah,
But again, that project's, I guess, is off the table. I mean, these companies, we've been contacted over the last 3 or 4 years now by probably 15 to 20 different companies wanting to develop portions of our property for solar.
oh, yeah.
So I mean, they contact everybody, they get, letters of agreement that they can explore developing a parcel. And then, most of the projects don't come to fruition for one reason or another. But,
I get at least once a month, I get a letter from somebody asking to lease my Gilman property, which is not gonna happen. So, because it's a hayfield.
So. Would there be members of the Conservation Commission? And I don't know, Steve, you guess you could answer. Would there be members of the planning board who would want to serve together on the committee that would
Bonnie
create
wants to be on the committee.
work on the ordinance?
I think there would be. I know Ray Simon also visited the Long Road property last couple of weeks ago when they had that. I had talked to Ray about it. He sort of takes the view that maybe we have enough performance standards in the ordinance. But I'm not sure myself that they really have any teeth to them, some of the provisions that, as I pointed out, a lot of this dual farming is, if you can do it, it's the language is conditional, but I'm getting off track. Yeah, I think we could muster up some volunteers. As I say, Bonnie, I know, is very interested.
And you said you would serve, Andy.
Oh, yeah.
And you, with other, I think Noni's up there. Noni?
Yeah.
Yes. Already served.
No, I probably would not. I'm very interested in it, but I am not at a spot where I can take anything else on. So. Right. But I'm right there listening and learning. So,
I mean, I can certainly go back to again, I mean, you guys talked earlier about how would you want to form the committee, you know, but if you wanted it to be planning board and conservation commission, I mean, I can certainly go back to the other couple folks on the conservation commission and see if either of them would be willing to serve. If you wanted to from our commission, we only have really 4 super active members during the winter. Herb Whittier goes to Florida. Yeah.
So if you want, you could set Andy, you could go see who wants to serve, and then at your next meeting, if they can get their applications, then we can bring them to you, and then you can decide whether it's 5, 7, 9, you know, whatever. But if you're interested, that's a path if you want.
Great. I think that's a good idea.
Can you do the same, Steve?
Pardon me?
Did you ask the planning board members?
Yes, yeah, I'll bring it up at the the meeting next week.
Okay, so we won't have to advertise it, just we draw from these 2 groups. That'd be okay.
Up to you guys.
Fine with me. Do you need a motion to move forward on this, or is it just a conversation?
Just a conversation at this point. We can get the applications, and then you can formally appoint them at the next meeting.
Yeah, I would say the right way to go would be to find approximately 3 members from each committee. And then a member of the select board. Is anyone interested in being on that? Being the liaison?
Joe's not here. You should just make.
Yeah, look at me, Joe.
That's what he gets for going to Puerto Rico.
Yeah. Crazy.
And if Joe won't do it, I'll do it.
Because you go to the meetings anyway, so you might. I don't know. Oh, yeah. It stopped. So, all right.
Just the fire alarm, it's the box, and it resets the power flip.
Yeah.
My hope would be that we don't have to declare a moratorium, that instead we can simply come up with the changes, invite whoever's thinking about making a proposal or has a proposal pending to come and listen to the conversation. If there's things there that they're super uncomfortable with, they can say why, and we can move forward. We don't have to hold up anybody's, investment in planning. Because there is plenty of time. We would need to have something nailed down by the beginning of April.
Yes, ish, by your first meeting.
Oh, yeah.
That sounds great. Yeah, I will reach out to the other members besides Noni and see if I can drag anybody else along. Thank you.
And next is to consider an abatement request for map 5 lot 20-4.
So as you probably read in Donna's memo to you, this is he is recommending you grant this abatement because of topography. Says the parcel has 14.35 acres of swampland that previously was not recognized in their assessment. The amount to be abated is $167.70.
I make a motion that we follow the tax assessor's recommendations to give an abatement for map 5 lot 20-4.
I'll second that.
So Kent has made a motion, Chris has seconded it to approve the abatement for request for Dawn and Randall Hamill, both former students. All those in favor? I think they both, I'm sure Dawn. On to warrant number 11.
Muscogin Bank. This is debt service payment for Beach Maple in Maine, $41,225,000. Muscogin Bank, Monmouth Academy. Project debt service, $127,053. Blue Rock Earthworks, materials transport for the transfer station, $5,163. Fleet truck and refrigeration, vehicle maintenance, $4,691. Balls LLC boots, and is this for you? Are these boots for you guys? Is that what? Or in other equipment? Looks like there's two things here. $1,070. Sorry, I'm gonna butcher this guy's name. Giancarlo Mataloni, overpayment of property taxes, $1,453, paid twice. Main commercial tire, $1,353. Main waste to energy, tipping fees, $2,374. RSU 2, $486,060. State of Maine, Bureau of Motor Vehicles, $2,789. For a total of $684,409.91.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion that we approve warrant number 11 for fiscal year 22-23.
I'll second that.
Ken has made a motion, Chris has seconded it. Approve warrant number 11 for fiscal year 22-23. All those in favor? You.
Mr. Chair, before we adjourn, I thought of a couple of things I probably should have brought up during the select board comments. One has to do with we skipped a month on the meeting of the Economic Development Committee, but we're going to have another meeting in December to bring forward some ideas on how we might modify the TIF plan that the town has. There's a process there. We have to get it approved by voters, send it off to the state for approval. So that's coming. One of the thoughts that we had was to invite Maine cabin masters to some meeting in December. I understand that their transaction on the lumberyard and on Route 202 is supposed to close sometime in December. And following that closing, it was suggested that perhaps inviting them to come meet with the select board to kind of fill us in on what their plans might be for that property and how we might be able to be helpful and supportive in developing that property. So I just wanted to throw that out there. That was a topic of conversation at the on the economic development. Okay. Yeah, great. The other question, and this is for Justin, the town manager. We had some conversation earlier on about one of the line items on the budget that was coming up short, and it had to do with non-permitted improvements around town. And we formerly had a process for sort of detecting those and making sure that folks were still being charged what they owed the town for these types of non-permitted improvements. Have we done anything with that?
Oh, for like the assessment, you know, like how Donna used to ride around with Dave and
Exactly.
they'd find things. Not really, because they don't work the same day, so they're not really available most often. When Dave was in the office all the time, he was there when Richard was there, and we have part-time, so their days don't always line up like they used to.
Is there a way that we could start thinking about a solution for that to make sure that the folks that there's no incentive to not pull a permit, that folks are paying their fair share if they're doing non-permitted work?
Yep.
Because that's really the intent.
Richard now gets more regular complaints because he's around more than our previous person who was only here a couple hours a week. So he goes out when he's here most days. He's out at least a couple of hours for almost every day he's here for something. Like today, he had to go do something. Someone paved a road or something like that across the right of way without permission of the actual landowner. So there's more complaints coming in now. I don't know if people are just getting used to him being around more during the day or he's more reachable. I don't know what it is, but
Yeah.
he is out and about more than our previous code officer was. I can tell you that.
Well, I'm thinking, something along the lines of, I don't know if it's additional coverage for Richard or what, but something along the lines of someone who could team up with the assessor to understand exactly what's going on with non-permitted work.
I would think it would be, if you're a new code enforcement officer, you don't have a lot of historic knowledge of what houses looked like beforehand. Where Dave had been around for a while, so we'd know if somebody put a deck on or built an addition. So I would think, even just driving around, unless you happen to see Mark in somebody's yard, found in nails putting up a garage and there's no permit outside.
Not that Mark would do that.
Not that Mark would do that. So Richard gonna know that all of a sudden is there and not there in the 6 months that he's been working for us. So that's, to me, in my mind, I'm going, how's he gonna pull that off, out riding around in a car?
To you?
It's probably just as important to make sure that that communication between Richard and Donna are there. So when people come in and say, I'm done with my project,
Yes.
Richard has done his final inspection, that Donna is aware of that is complete and she can add that value
Yeah,
to the property.
Exactly.
And make sure that is getting done.
He gives her copies of the building permits, obviously, that does, which answers the people that are coming in.
Yeah.
And she obviously keeps those on file. When you pull a building permit, she doesn't go right out because she needs it to be done.
Yeah.
Or to some extent, she has to guess how much was done on April 1st. So like if you're pulling a permit right now, she doesn't really care, but it goes in a file and sometime around April, she'll go out and try to figure out, well, is there a foundation in? Is it semi-closed in? And then she has to make her judgments on that value. So that's what she does with those building permits. But
I know she got mine.
she got yours, showed up at your house.
No, she didn't show up at my house, but my tax bill reflected it. No.
Probably came when you went home on it.
Mark, yes.
As you drive around being older, do you see that stuff going on that you think, I wonder if you have.
I really don't. I mean, most of the projects you see that are like visible roadside, especially if there's earthwork going on, or it's like, they had to pull a permit for that. There are enough people that are gonna be aware of that. I mean, is there someone down on a back camp road that put a little deck off the back of their camp that no one ever saw? There could be, but I don't know how you would police that, other than when the reevaluation comes around, when they go visit every resident, things they got done that they didn't know about, they now become aware of because of the reevaluation.
Yeah.
And I don't know how often we do that. It's been,
We did a statistical one
17.
in 17.
I don't think a full one's been done sometime. And it's on your capital plan to start putting money away for it, because like we talked about at budget time, the ratio here is falling which affects, our revenue that comes in the mill rate. It makes the mill rate artificially high.
conceivably in the next 5 years.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, I would think it's-
Well, and yet we're seeing a significant budgetary impact, right? I mean, we had to lower our expectations for the budget from the incremental assessment increases because we're not capturing assessments that we used to capture when Dave was full-time.
I'm not sure the difference I'm not sure I would say it was significant. We probably picked up 9 million on the substation, and then probably close to 10 million on everything else. So what when I went back and looked at it afterwards, I'm not sure where some of those numbers came from that were brought here before. I didn't have them in front of me, so I couldn't really dispute them, but I'm happy to bring them to your next meeting if you're interested in seeing what
Yeah,
it has been over the past few years.
I mean, and I don't know how much weight to give this, but the figure was something like, $60,000 tax revenue. That was in the budget that we didn't realize. And the implication was, and again, this is secondhand, third-hand information. The implication was this was going unrecognized because we weren't being as careful about looking for non-permanent work.
You've had initial meetings with the department heads, these guys, for budget,
Yes,
and so
I've distributed the budget worksheets for them to get working on, and they're supposed to have those into me by, I think it was December 15th. Yeah. And then at that point, I think it's the first meeting that you have in January. You'll have your initial draft from me. Yep.
Did we get the stickers on?
Yes.
Thank you for bringing that up. That reminds me of what we're talking.
No, it's not having a conversation. No,
You want to talk about dump stickers again?
no, don't do it.
Sorry. I'm sorry.
It's easier when there's a sound, you just throw it in a hole.
As Bo said, I dumped it, they transferred it. So.
I was so mad, he said, you go home. I'm staying because you're talking about it, so I'm gonna report back.
Make a motion, we adjourn.
I'll second.
All those in favor?